question parents ask me all the time is this: what does my child send to you immediately? But yet, when I ask them to do the exact same thing, they argue, they ignore me, or suddenly they act like they don't hear me. And if you've ever felt that frustration, I want to start by saying something very important right away. This is extremely common. It happens in many families, and it does not mean that your child respects the nanny more than you. It also doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong as a parent. In fact, in many cases, the reason this happened actually says something very healthy about your relationship with your child. Today, I want to explain what is really happening when kids behave differently with their caregiver than they do with their parent. And I'm also going to share some things that parents can do if they want to create more cooperation at home. And this explanation is coming from someone who has spent over 20 years working inside families' homes, observing their children, their routines, and the family dynamics every single day. Firstly, children naturally behave differently with different adults. The first things parents need to understand is that children naturally adjust their behaviors depending on who they are interacting with. Think back and just think about how children behave differently with different people in their lives. A child may behave one way with their teacher, their grandparents, their babysitter, their nanny, or their parents. At the end of the day, these are all different relationships. And children instinctively understand that each of these relationships are different. For example, many parents have heard teachers say something like, "Your child is so well behaved at school." And the parents think, "Are we talking about the same child?" And trust me, that is not unusual. Children adapt their behaviors depending on the environment and of course the expectation that they perceive from the adults in front of them. Parents are the emotional safe place. One of the biggest reasons children behave differently with their parents is because parents represent emotional safety. Children know, often unconsciously, that their parents' love is not conditional. This relationship is permanent. And because of that deep security, children often feel comfortable expressing their biggest emotions with their parents. This can include frustration, anger, sadness, resistance, and of course testing boundaries, because we all know, children test boundaries. So when a child argues with a parent or pushes limit, it's not necessarily a sign of disrespect. Often it's a sign that the child feels completely safe being themselves around you or around that parent. In many ways, children save their most intense emotional reaction for the people that they trust the most. And obviously, most of the time, that's their parents. Structure is often clearer with caregivers. Another reason children may cooperate more easily with nannies or their caregiver has to do with the structure and predictability. Professional caregivers oftentimes operate within very clear and very specific routines. Personally, I love routine. Nothing better than a routine. For example, a nanny might say something like, "First, we clean up the toys, then we go outside." Or, "After lunch, we read a book, then it's nap time." Children thrive in predictable environments. When you know exactly what comes next, they are less likely to be resistant. Parents, on the other hand, are juggling and handling so many other responsibilities at once. They may be managing work, phone calls, dinner, errands, household responsibilities, and of course, the emotional exhaustion. So naturally, routines may be less frequent or maybe might change more frequently throughout the day. That does not make parents less effective. It simply means that their role in the household is so much more broad. But children tend to cooperate so much more easily when the structure throughout the day feels so much more predictable. Nannies often use clear, direct instructions. Another difference often comes down to communication style. Caregivers frequently use short, clear, very short and clear instructions. For example, "Please put on your shoes." Instead of entering into this long explanation about why the shoes are necessary, parents often fall into negotiation mode. They might say something like, "We need to put on your shoes because we're running late, and if we don't get to the car soon, blah blah blah." Children can sense when the instructions are negotiable. Clear directions reduce that negotiation dynamic. Emotional energy plays a huge role. Another factor that many parents don't think about is emotional energy. When a nanny arrives in the home in the morning, she's often entering the environment with fresh energy. She hasn't been through the morning rush, she hasn't managed bedtime routine the night before, and she hasn't been balancing work, responsibilities, and household tasks. Parents, however, have been present for every single moment of the child's day, on the weekends obviously, to can sense the emotional history. So, when a caregiver enters the home with calm, steady energy, children often respond well to that shift. It can create a reset in the environment. Children separate roles naturally. Children are often very good at recognizing authority roles. They understand that the teacher has one role, parents have another role, and the caregiver has yet another role. For many children, the nanny represents a structured daytime authority figure, while the parent represents the emotional center of the family. Because of that, children may challenge parents more frequently, not because they respect their parents less, but because the emotional relationship is way deeper. The amount of time spent together. Another factor is simply time spent together. Nannies often spend many daytime hours with children in structured activities such as play, reading, outdoor time, craft, learning activities, while parents spend more time during morning, evening transitions, and tired moments. Those times of day can naturally bring out more emotional behavior in children. So parents sometimes experience children when they are hungry, when they're tired, when they're overstimulated, and they're transitioning between activities. Those situations will naturally lead to more resistance. Now that we understand why this dynamic happens, let's talk about what parents can do if they want to incorporate more cooperation at home. One of the most helpful strategies is consistent routines. Children feel calmer and more cooperative when they understand what the day actually looks like. For example, morning routines, dinner routines, and bedtime routines help children feel secure. Another helpful strategy is clear instructions. Instead of asking, "Do you want to put on your shoes?" try saying, "It's time to put on your shoes." This reduces the feeling that the instruction is optional. Another helpful step is alignment between parents and caregiver. If parents and nannies are similar in their expectations for things like morning routines, disciplines, and transitions, children are experiencing a more consistent environment because consistency reduces confusion and the power struggle. If your child behaves differently with a nanny than they do with you, the most important thing to do, or at least to remember, is this. Children push boundaries most with the people they feel safest with. Your child is expressing big emotions with you does not mean that they respect you less. In many cases, it means they trust you completely. And that trust is actually one of the biggest foundation, or at least the biggest, strongest foundation for a healthy parent-child relationship. So, if you've ever wondered why your child listens to their nanny but argues with you, you're not alone. This is one of the most common dynamics in households with caregivers. Understanding the psychology behind it can help parents approach these moments with way more confidence, less frustration, and a deeper understanding of what their child is actually communicating. Bye guys.